All right. Thanks everybody for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's. Can you make me host again, Brian? And I can let folks into the room. Great. Yeah, thanks for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 16th of some month in the 2020 year. What is it, June, right? Great. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Make sure to add your name to the Google Doc, the minutes, and we can get started. Do we have any announcements before we get into the agenda? I don't see Jory online, but I'm sure we have announcements.
We do have a few meetings happening today. There's a collab summit planning session right after this. And then there's a standards working group meeting right after that. And then there's an OpenJS Foundation marketing committee meeting after that. So lots of meetings today for OpenJS. Yeah,
it's a busy day. Every other Tuesday's busy. And yeah, it's especially busy right now because we have something happening next week, right?
Oh yeah, we have our OpenJS World Conference and Collaborator Summit. So Monday, Thursday, and Friday are the Collab Summit. And then Tuesday and Wednesday are OpenJS World. Wow, there's a lot going on next week. So if you haven't registered, please do. And we look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Is there a deadline to register, or can people register like as the event's going on and then pop in?
I believe they can register as the event's going on.
Cool.
Great.
That's good.
I had a question. I had a quick question. So if you registered, should you get a links to every single day, or there's just one unified link to attend all the events, or there's a link for each single day?
That's a good question. Let me find out for you.
Thank you.
Right. I see Jory's joined, and she's always got announcements. Do you want to chime in on anything, Jory? Assuming you have audio going. Where are you? I saw her. Jory. Anyway, feel free to chime in, Jory.
Okay, there we go. I'm so sorry, guys. My my audio, my Zoom was not connecting. Hi, everyone. I do have some announcements. Probably the most important was already shared, which is that next week is OpenJS World. It's actually a whole week of JavaScript. The most JavaScript week that ever was is beginning next week. The 22nd, because we have Collab Summit, and the Node community are having a bunch of meetings, the AMP community are having a bunch of meetings. We have Mocha, we have WebDriver, we have jQuery. Just a bunch of groups are getting together. We want everybody to be there and get involved. So we're very excited about that. Also today we have the summit planning meeting, the last summit planning meeting before the summit, and then we have the standards team meeting, and then we have the marketing team meeting. So it's like today, Tuesday, is OpenJS Foundation meeting Fun Times Day. Yeah, and so those are the biggest announcements, because that's basically all I can fit in my brain right now anyway.
Let me ask you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had one quick question on the first day, which is like a new contributor day.
Yep.
Is that something where you need volunteers from the projects, like in addition to the people who've been helping to organize, or is it all set? And
so for the most part on New Contributor Day, what we have are several projects doing introduction style workshops and how to contribute style workshops. So I think the best way to see about getting involved there, if you want to help out, is to ping the session facilitators to see if they would like some extra hands in the room just to provide support. Foundation staff are going to be there. Myself, Celia, Robin, others from the events team are going to be there in case people have any questions about the platform. If you were interested in kind of getting a look at what that is, which is Kiko Chat, I popped a link to a video I made yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't remember, about how that platform works. So just take a look at that and let me know if you have any questions about Kiko Chat. But you're welcome to come, and there's ad hoc rooms, there's plenty of space for discussion and all that, even if you're not necessarily gonna hop into a workshop. If you just wanna come hang, I'll be there, so you know, it'll be cool.
What about the schedule? I know the event schedule is posted. The Collab Summit schedule is in a PR, is that correct?
So the Collab Summit schedule can be viewed 2 locations now. So if you are registered to attend, you can build your schedule in Schedge for the first day. I'm hoping to, and I have a couple more like last minute sessions that have been popping in on the Summit repo to get booked up, but we're gonna have those added to Schedge as well by the end of this week, so people can build their schedule in Schedge along with their OpenJS World schedule. You can also take a look at the pull request, which is open now on the Summit for the latest info on the event time. So there's 3 different tables for 3 different days. Also, if you want another place you can view the schedule, you can log into the Kiko Chat platform early and get a peek at yours truly's schedule there. So
Is there a link we can put in the notes for people? Like the Sched link or something like that?
I don't know how to, I'll be honest, I don't really know how Schedge works, just that it does. So I can't get that for you, unfortunately, but what I can get for you there in the chat Zoom here is the collabsummit.kikochat.com link, which for our community members who are registered to attend, you can go there today and make your account to log in for the day of early and see that stuff there. And then obviously the pull request on the Summit repo, which is, I think I want to say, I don't remember what pull request number that is. I'll tell you here in just a second.
Sure.
It is PR number 298, and I will pop that in for you too.
Would it be possible to get that merged so the public link would not have to include a Git commit ID, so it would be more stable?
Yes, that I will love to merge that as soon as I get the last few sessions scheduled for which I've had 2 or 3 over the weekend that were like, hey, Jory, is it too late to? And the answer is no, it's never too late. But
yeah,
also,
that was kind of, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jory, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I know in the past, things have been a little fluid right down to the last moments. Do we expect that it being in Schedge or Schedge or however you say that, that it'll be a little bit more locked in, or do you think we'll still have some fluidity?
So what's on the schedule is going to be locked in, and we need to do that, y'all, just because it's a remote event this year and we're dealing with multiple time zones. That doesn't mean that if you think of something last minute that there's not time, you know, that you can't do it. We've got lots of room for you in ad hoc space. We can build more rooms out. Just let me know if that happens day of. We can totally arrange that. But what I can't do, just for the sake of the hundreds, frankly, because we've got lots of people signed up for this, of other people, is completely blow up the schedule. So that's just sort of that's one of the trades. That's one of the trade-offs.
Yeah.
And Jory, you're asking folks to host those ad hoc rooms or just to sort of be the room hosting. You can use it or not use it, correct?
Correct. You can use it or not use it. And when you log into Kiko Chat, you navigate to an ad hoc room. There's an Etherpad in there. So the plan is just, hey, it's a community space. If you're in there having a conversation, say Jory and Joe are talking about, you know, revitalizing the CPC repository. That's not even the thing, but let's say we talk about that. We would pop it on the Etherpad and just say, hey, Jory and Joe are talking about this. And people could navigate to it, see that we're talking about it, join us or not. Join us, change the topic. It doesn't matter, you know. I'll probably just be in there talking about whatever people want to talk about. Like, when is The Witcher coming back? I need that show on again, for example.
Breakout room.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll just say too really quickly, I see some names I don't recognize in the attendees. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or speak up, or you know, otherwise be involved. Welcome. Any other announcements or anything like that?
I can't possibly right now. I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anything from like the board or such?
I don't think there's any updates. The board meeting, I think, is on the schedule for next week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
did have a follow-up last week on a number of the legal items that we've been talking about. So just to maybe give a brief update.
Your mic's really busted.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Let's try this. Let's see if that's any better. Does that work?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. Sorry. So a couple of quick updates here. So we had the legal committee meeting last week. There were a couple of things which I had said I would give you some updates on. There are some bylaws changes which we're looking at, which, you know, it looks like those are going to be relatively non-controversial. There was some discussion about some updates to the CLA, basically changing over from the existing JS Foundation style CLA to the more common Apache style CLA. There's a little more discussion that's needed on this one, but all the same, I think the general feeling was it's better to use something that's more standard. There are some other questions which come in from AMP as well, which those are also under discussion. We're going to need a follow-up meeting on that one. And we had very briefly gone through this question, which had been raised by Node about, you know, what's the proper way to handle DCO remediations. And that also, unfortunately, we ran out of time because we talked about everything else, but we'll have some follow-up meetings here fairly shortly in order to just move this stuff forward. There weren't any big surprises on the call. I think mainly it's giving people a little bit of time to chew things over so that they're able to advise their board reps appropriately when the things do come up for a vote. So that's where we are. I think we're making good progress. If anybody has any questions, then you can ping me and I can take you through it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Anything else before we get into the agenda? No? Cool. I thought, so the first item on here is an issue I created, just trying to spur some Collab Summit sessions. I thought I had removed the agenda. I did yesterday, but I guess right after the meeting was built. I don't think there's really too much to talk about here. I think we'll kind of fill in some CPC sessions on one of the days, so we'll work that out. Moving on, the next issue is the CPC chair election. The last meeting, we said if nobody objects, I will continue doing what I'm doing. So I guess that's the case. So thanks, and I will remove this label. Cool. I guess I could even close this, right? Thanks, y'all. Boom. All right, look at that. Making progress. Cool. Next up is the OpenJS Collaboration Network. Michael, do you want to chime in here as the champion of this project?
Yep, I still have the action to address a few questions from comments on it, and I haven't had a chance to get back to that. Sorry, but high on my list, just too many things going on. So hope to get back to that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's busy time. So just to provide a little more information, you do have a pull request open to move it to stage 2, and there are some questions on that you're addressing.
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right, I popped the link to the pull request 557 into the chat in case anybody wants to take a look at that. But otherwise, we will move on. So the next item on the agenda is the second director seat. How about we save that one and do the other ones real quickly, and then maybe come back to that? Yeah, let's just do these 2 others quickly. The Add Foundation-wide copyright guidance, which is pull request 414. This has been stalled, which is okay. And if it's
this is still mine,
stalled,
right?
yes, I believe
Yes.
so.
So as promised, I'm waiting to put AMP firmly into the foundation and then focus on this.
Right on.
So give it another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, I mean, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. No worries. We'll get this over the finish line soon. And then I believe Martin's on the call. The next one is responsible security disclosures. There's a PR to move guidelines to stage 2, which is pull request 566 in the CPC repo. Do you want to add anything here, Martin?
I think the main thing at this point, as far as I understand, is to get feedback from the projects if, how would complying with that policy look like, if there's anything that we need to update, modify, or adjust. So like giving a shout out to projects to comment on that PR, I think would be the top thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Jory, is that something you can help with, or how should we best do that? Like, there's a proposal, but before we land it, like, it looks good to me, but I think before we land it, we need feedback from the projects that they're all going to be okay with that.
Yeah, that's definitely something I can help get in front of. Certainly a lot of the maintainers who aren't usually present for CPC meetings. So I'm happy to support that and help make that happen.
Great. Thank you.
And everybody who's here, if they can jump in, take a look, and +1, it would be helpful too.
Yeah. Cool. All right, thank you all. So moving on, but actually back up, let's touch on the second director seat, or director seats in general, probably. This is issue 438. This is regarding the second director seat that for the first year was allocated to Node, and we're figuring out what to do this coming year. We had decided, well, first I'll say Brian posted an initial draft for what a community board seat, what the expectations are and such. So that is pull request 562. And we had decided last meeting, in an effort to avoid any unnecessary bike shedding, that we would have folks express interest directly to me. I don't know if this is, I've got a handful of interested parties. I don't know what's the best way to kind of move forward on this seat, and I guess overall the board seats. I don't know if the intention was to, those names I collected in private, and so I don't know if we want to discuss this in a private session, or how we want to move forward on this.
My understanding, Joe, was the idea was that you would get out of those people saying that they were interested, get an idea of like whether it was a done deal, was like basically one person being interested, or whether it was more than that and you had to like look into something deeper. So I think that was the outcome of that, at least it was my understanding.
Yeah, so I guess I'll try to summarize with things remaining not anonymous still. You know, there's one person who's interested who is completely new to the project and the work, and then the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, excuse me, are folks who are active in the work already. They're all, you know, some form of member of the CPC already, voting and regular members. You know, so we have some interested parties. As I understand it, the CPC director seat that goes to the board, that is elected from voting members. And then this second seat, you know, is yet to be determined. Of the list I have, 2 of them are voting members. I kind of wonder about, do we do both seats at the same time? Do we do the director seat first and let voting members work on that? And then, you know, we can do the second seat after that, so that, you know, we have more folks involved. You know, I don't know, should somebody draft up a proposal? What, should we discuss this at the Collab Summit? What do we think we should do? I don't know if my you know, anonymous details are helpful in working through this process.
I think it shows there's a fairly broad interest, right?
Yeah.
There's not, you know, you're not down to a single volunteer. So if you have, I mean, part of it was there were no volunteers at this on the CPC side. You know, maybe, you know, leave it as a node seat, but it sounds like there's enough interest that that's not the case, right?
Yeah, six folks interested.
That's cool and healthy. I'm kind of thrilled, frankly.
Yeah, I agree.
Given that we've just heard from Jory that it's still possible to get things onto the Collab Summit agenda, and given that it is next week, that sounds like an excellent thing for, I mean, excellent forum in which to talk about a community director in particular, and otherwise the seats as well.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to jump to the oh, this is not what I wanted, to the pull request to see, because if I'm not mistaken, the CPC has kind of just a block of time, and so we can work on these sorts of things as we would like. How do I get to see this file? View file. Almost there. So I think Jory stepped away, or I would ask her directly. But I think that was the plan. I don't see it in the agenda, like sort of CPC sessions. There's OpenJS collaboration and governance, but that's only an hour. Oh, that's on the new contributors day. So I expect that there will be, you know, maybe a whole day of open time for cross-project council and OpenJS working groups to work on things. And I can just get
the expiry of the current board representatives is June 30th.
Yeah, so that's
so in terms of doing a vote, yeah, I didn't realize quite so soon, but
yeah. And is that expiration for both the board seats that we have active right now?
yes.
Okay.
Let me just make sure for that. As per the CPC chart, the term for the CPC board representative is 1 year. Representatives is 1 year. Yeah. Yeah, we agreed to extend them, or to basically make them both go to June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'd like to you know, draft a proposal on this. I hesitate to volunteer because I'm already late on my OpenJS commitments, world commitments, but and things are busy right now. But I feel like we have the CPC director, which is from the voting members, and we should run that election, and then we should do the second seat immediately after that, and we should figure out how to do that in a more broad, open way. In terms of who can nominate. I think we talked last week that even if someone who nominated and is new to the work, the people who are involved in the work, they're more of a known entity, so it would seem likely that they would get more votes regardless. So I don't expect that somebody new can just come in and take over or what have you. But I think it would be good to be as open as possible to get more people involved. So that would perhaps be along the lines of what I would propose. My question though is how do we elect these folks? For the director, it comes from the voting members, and I think it even says in the charter that voting members would elect that person. So voting members vote. But for the more community open seat, is that a vote from all members, regular and voting members? Do projects have a say in a vote on that? How we implement that election is kind of the really big question mark for me.
Yeah, I think that you're right. That's part of defining who can run and who votes, right?
Yeah.
And I think probably giving the Node project an FYI, which they asked that based on the feedback, it sounds like it won't be a renewal of that.
Yeah. Did I hear somebody else looking to chime in?
I typed a suggestion, but basically, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dylan.
Basically, just maybe if we have a way to sort of include all members plus maybe all active committers to foundation projects if they care. But I don't know if we have a way to come up with that list. But the idea is you want to get people who are actively engaged with the full community, but not people who are just kind of never involved. But we don't even have a list like that, so I'm not sure how we would facilitate that.
Yeah, having it that open scares me a little bit in terms of how do we execute that. But I do wonder about the combination of regular members and voting members voting, as well as perhaps each project gets 1 or 2 votes, which I think that's how we elected the voting member that represents the at large or non-impact projects. Yeah. So we could combine that perhaps.
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Agreed.
I do agree that I like Dylan's proposition though, but I think maybe next year.
I love that idea. I just don't know how we would execute that.
Well, maybe over the next year we encourage active committers to become members if they're interested.
Yeah.
Make more of an outreach.
Yeah, I think the important thing is to not to have a wide gap between committers and governance and who's actually making decisions at the governance level. And so I definitely do agree with Dylan on this, and also agree that it's probably impossible to do that by next week. but however, yeah, I really do think it's an important thing to shorten that gap between the committers and the governance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my just read the reading of the charter. It sounded to me like it just says the CPC will elect the director representative. So it's a voting member, but elected by the CPC is the only wording I could find.
Say that again.
So the wording for the first director is a representative for the CPC who is selected, is nominated from the voting members, but elected by the CPC. So I didn't see anything that said it needed only the voting members voted for that.
Yeah, I think you have to read that carefully, and I'm open.
I could be wrong.
I'm trying to find where it says it again here, going back. Where is this in the governance or the charter?
I was looking in the charter. Maybe there's something more in the governance.
I was reading it earlier. Where's election?
Yeah, so it's the CPC will elect from amongst voting CPC members a CPC chairperson to work on building an agenda for CPC meetings and a CPC director to represent the CPC to the board for a term of 1 year according to the OpenJS bylaws. The chair and director may be, but are not required to be the same person. The CPC shall hold annual elections to select a CPC chairperson and director. There's no limits on the number of terms a CPC chairperson or director may serve.
Yeah, so this, just for folks, I'll pop this into the chat. This is the wording that is sort of the question about the director role.
I guess just a quick question on this, Joe. Does it really matter what's written right now? I know that we want to follow it, but if we as a group have a slightly different vision as to what we'd want to see done here, we really could start from like what we'd want to see happen and then augment the bylaws or rules. I think it would probably be the governance, not the bylaws or the charter, but like augment the documents that are required to reflect the reality we'd like to have, since a lot of this was kind of drafted prior to us actually running the CPC.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Miles.
I was just trying to clarify that I think at least my read of it was would be that all CPC members vote. So I don't know if that's what people think is we'd want or not want, but like, you know, to Miles' point, we can change things, but
yeah. No, I like the idea of all the members voting on the director role. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds good to me too. So if we can interpret it that way.
Apart from the semantics of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, voting members. It's kind of weird.
Well, yeah, no, yeah.
I agree with the point. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering why we have voting members at this point. But you know, I do agree with what we want to have.
Yeah, it's in the other parts. It is clearly calls out what the voting members do versus regular members. It's just like in that particular text, it doesn't say voting members. It says CPC, right? So it's kind of written so that if it doesn't specify, it implies all members, and then when it means the specific one. So, but I know what you're saying, but
I was just being facetious. So
yeah, okay.
I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
So I'm personally fine with seeing this reading as saying that everyone from the CPC votes on the representation, and that representation does represent everyone, not only the voting members. If anything, I would say we may want to consider making this more lenient in allowing non-voting members to run for these roles. But I think like that is something that we could follow up with at another time.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's possibly a good change as well. And
agreed.
All right. So
I guess back
maybe,
to, sorry, I was just going to say back to your original point that, you know, if we can, it would make sense to, I think, schedule that first election.
Yeah.
So at least when we get to the end of June, we've got one person in place.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Something we've talked about before that I also think is worth considering is staggering the elections and whether or not we'd want to. I think there's definitely value in just moving forward with all the elections at once. But from an onboarding perspective, as someone who's been on the board, I think it probably would be better. And other folks feel free to interject if you disagree. But I think it would be better to have only one person who you're onboarding onto the board at a time, and having other community elected representatives have terms that extend over. If I recall correctly, like in the Node Foundation, when we had elected individuals, there were 2-year terms that overlapped, so that like one person was there to kind of help onboard the next person. We're not looking at 2-year terms here, which I think is absolutely fine. But like I think we should maybe consider offsetting elections by 6 months to allow time for, you know, both the board to bring on new people and give the new person the right focus, but also to allow community reps to kind of support each other as they're joining and leaving.
I'd just like to give a huge plus onto that. I haven't been on the board for the Node Foundation at all, or the foundation formerly known as the Node Foundation. But in Node and specifically in the TSC and ComCom, our elections are offset, and that has historically helped me and helped others, from what I've heard, kind of come into things more effectively. So I'd give a huge +1 to staggering it like that.
I agree. I just want to point out that elections also take time. And if we have them every 6 months and we take like 2 or 3 weeks to handle those every 6 months, like we end up just doing only elections and not much else. And so I think like if we have a really solid system that, you know, runs well and it's simple and that we'll agree to carry on year after year, I think that works. If not, I want to be careful not to be just running. In the AMP advisory committee, we had like elections every 6 months for like similar reasons. And we ended up doing like way too much just election time.
What is the process of, sorry, just as, what is the process of setting up an election and why does it take so much time? Is it getting the word out or is it the actual platform being used?
No, I think that it's the process, and I think we kind of keep deliberating, you know, who we choose and how we choose them. So I'm hopeful that once we kind of nail this down, that it will be routine and we can just execute and maybe spend more time promoting it, especially if we do have a more open community seat. But I hope that's moving forward once we nail this down, that we should be good.
Yeah, I would kind of add to that, and I say like I think we have a little bit of a too many cooks situation where everyone has opinions and we're all kind of creating space for that, and not deciding to go forward with one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to try to draft something simple up that, you know, maybe isn't necessarily governance and charter wording, but just kind of outline what I think would make sense based on what we've been talking about, and open it up as some sort of PR that we can comment on and hone, and then maybe translate that into, you know, actual governance documentation, and we can move forward on that. Cool.
Sounds good.
Great. Excellent.
Quick
So
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Just before we move on, did we want to consider amending the charter at all, maybe in the voting section to reflect adding all members to vote on this rather than, because I think there's only verbiage regarding the CPC voting members.
Yeah, I think we can clarify that in whatever changes we decide on out of this process. And that's part of what I wanted to write down, capture, is, you know, who will vote on the director seat, who would vote on a quote unquote community seat. And we can kind of discuss that in the PR and then document it.
Great. Sounds good.
I guess the question is, do we want to delay kicking off that first election to clarify that, or like, are we comfortable interpreting what's written there as that and then further clarifying later on?
I don't know. Is anybody here a cop? Are we worried about getting busted?
Well, I mean, I read it as all members, right? So it's kind of like you could go either way. So it's not like it's not, in my mind, it's not like we need to change anything. We're just going to clarify what the intent was. But
I agree. And sorry, maybe the cop comment is not appropriate in these days at the moment, but you know what I mean? I think that we can interpret what we have there in a way that we can move forward and then clarify it beyond.
Do we need to vote on this, or is this something we can just agree to?
Well, let me put something together, and then we can comment there, and then, you know, make updates, I guess. I mean, I'm a little worried that, you know, if we're making governance changes and we got to wait 2 weeks and all that stuff, but I feel like that's the way we need to move forward.
that was kind of my point. Like, I know there's the, like, the defining what the second seat will be, but do we need to wait on the first seat as well, was the only question I was trying to clarify.
Is there any precedent from last year that we can use for whether you're eligible to?
To a good question. I can't remember who voted last year.
Probably have that. Let me look back through my email.
Because you're right, that's probably the strongest indicator of what was intended.
Just a quick note on staggering while you look that up. We do have a small-ish board, so waiting 6 months for that second director and consensus on even a third for an at-large or individual would seem like a long time to wait. So would really welcome the CPC voices sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, and I wonder if we were to stagger in whatever time frame, if the existing member would just continue on until the election would happen. And I think perhaps if we are looking at 3 seats, then maybe 4-month overlap would be appropriate.
Yeah, to clarify there, I was definitely imagining the staggering would be not in lieu of having anyone in place. So it'd be more like, we have 2 people right now, let's replace one rather than replace both. Although like for this round, it may just make sense to move forward with like replacing everyone all at once. It was more in future, especially as we add this extra seat. If we're onboarding 3 new directors at the same time every year, that may end up being a lot of work.
Got it. Cool.
All right, cool. So I've taken some notes. I will figure out some way to propose something, and that'll include, you know, how we move forward with the current members, board members, and staggering and all this. I'll try to capture it all in one document. Cool. We were, I believe, hoping to talk about escalation path, but you know, we've definitely run out of time there. So hopefully that's another session we can have in the Collab Summit, which I think would be great. I think it would be great to spend, you know, a full hour or more on escalation path processes for code of conduct, and all that sort of goes into COC and moderation. So we'll try to put something clearly on the calendar for next week, and we can talk more about that then. And then beyond that, I think we had agreed to jump into a private session to talk more about some of those matters. So unless we have anything else, I guess we would call it the public session a wrap. Cool. Great. All right, so I will stop the live stream. Thanks everybody for joining in on the public session, and we'll go to private session. Cheers.
Thank you.